Welcome to the TalentGrow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Halelly Azulay.
Hey there, welcome back to the TalentGrow Show. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist, and this is episode 13 featuring my friend and colleague and mentor, Dr. Marcia Reynolds. She is an executive coach who is sought after the world over and one of the leaders in the coaching field. And she and I talk about the common mistakes she's seeing leaders make around the globe in all the work that she does all over the world. She also talks about what are some common fears, how to overcome them, how important it is to do the right kind of listening, and what's something that you need to do more of to be the kind of leader that people need you to be. And we talk about her latest book, The Discomfort Zone, and how important it is for leaders to push people into the discomfort zone and what that really means. And then we end the episode with a very actionable tip from Marcia to upgrade your leadership competency. I hope that you take action on the suggestion at the end. And as always, share this episode with others who you think might benefit from it and share feedback with me. Thanks for tuning in. Here we go. Welcome back to the TalentGrow Show. I'm Halelly Azulay, and I am here with a friend and a mentor and someone I admire, Dr. Marcia Reynolds, MCC. She's president of Co-Visioning, a leadership training and coaching firm that helps organizations unleash the brilliance in their people, which is just such an amazing tagline. I gotta maybe steal it one day. And when I say MCC, what that means is that Marcia is actually one of the first 25 people in the world to hold this distinguished certification, Master Certified Coach from the International Coach Federation, of which she is also a past president. So she really knows a lot about coaching and is an expert on organizational change and emotional intelligence in addition to coaching. She's also the author of 4 books, the latest of which is The Discomfort Zone, How Leaders Turn Difficult Conversations into Breakthroughs. In her free time, Marcia likes to accumulate degrees, write lots of books, and also hike in the mountains of Arizona. And I was very lucky to join her on a hike, I guess maybe a year ago in Arizona, which was just breathtaking and so much fun. Marcia, thank you for being on the TalentGrow Show and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me.
It's my pleasure completely. So today I am looking forward to introducing my audience to your work and to your brilliance. Some of them probably are very familiar with you already since you have made a name for yourself across the globe. But for those who haven't or don't know enough, can you give a little bit of an overview of your professional journey? Where have you been and how did you get to where you are now?
Well, like many people, it was sort of an accident. I say we often have accidental careers. I had actually started, my first master's was broadcasting, but I ended up as the AV coordinator for a mental hospital when I was pushing televisions around and threading film projectors, but it was for the training department. And my boss then decided to get her doctoral degree and pretty much dumped the whole department in my lap, with the first assignment being the management training.
Wow.
All these people that thought they knew everything about behavior, but honestly didn't know how to be a manager or a leader. So it was an interesting assignment, but I fell in love with training and developing leaders, and it just took off from there. It's why I went to get a second master's in education so I could figure out then what I was doing. But, then I moved into the technical field, and I worked for 11 years with high-tech companies and running training departments, changing cultures, and just, it was an amazing career internally with companies, and I got to learn a lot just from both successes and failures, what doesn't work, which teaches us a lot along the way. Yeah. And it was when I had decided to leave to start my own business in 1995 that I read this article about this thing called coaching. And I thought about, my most, not just successful, but most fulfilling times were when I got to work with the leaders one-on-one. So it wasn't just putting them through a training program, but really being there as their partner over time, and to see not just what they could do that worked really well with their people, but to see the growth and development in the person. And I just love that. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll get involved in this coaching thing. And then, of course, it was the right timing, and this coaching thing turned into pretty much my entire career from that point, that I still do a lot of training, but most of my training even has a coaching element. And even my approach to training is more of a coaching approach, that I'm far more inquisitive when I stand in front of the room and asking questions and getting people to think. So it really altered, who I am as a trainer, as well as what it is I offer people. And then along with that, right after I started my business is when I found emotional intelligence, and also fell in love with that, designed a training program. Was when the U.S. government called me to talk to me about training. They said, you're the only one that we can find on the internet that teaches emotional intelligence besides Daniel Goleman, and he costs too much. So I had a huge run of 5 years as teaching agencies of NIH. I'm the first to teach emotional intelligence in Russia and Kenya, because I came out early with my product and really dived into the research. And it's what led me to get my doctorate in understanding, how the brain works and how leaders can truly inspire people to make changes. So it's a combination of coaching and emotional intelligence that I work with people.
And those are things that are definitely interests we share. And I learned so much from you. It's fascinating. So your travels have taken you around the world, as you just mentioned. And I'm intrigued with hearing about some of your journeys and some of your experiences. And I was wondering if along the way, in working with leaders who are all over the globe, did you find any kind of a common theme or a common challenge that they seem to share?
Yeah. There's always this phenomenon where I think I know what it is it's best that I do, but I just don't do it. And we come up with all these reasons why I don't do it. And that thing that I find that leaders always say to me is, I know I need to spend more time talking to people and listening to them. I know that. But I don't do it because. And the reasons are always the same. They always start with, it takes so much time, and people are busy as well as I'm busy, and then they come down to, that's not really what they want from me. They want me to give them the answers. They want to come to me and I give them the answers so they can just go on and do their work. And then if we dig even deeper, especially with new leaders, there's always the excuse, well, but if I'm not the one who has the answers, they will think I'm incompetent. So when we get down to it, there's this fear of saying, well, what would you think to do? And helping people to think through it, because they're afraid of being judged that they don't have the answers, that they're not a competent leader. And I find this all over the world, that it's not just time, but it's fear that stops these leaders from just taking a moment and just being with the person in front of them and trying to help them to work through their problems, their issues, and even what's possible for them, even though that's what the employees are crying for.
I think that you're right. And a lot of times when people ask for advice, first of all, they don't even know how to ask for it. But also the quickest way to ask for it is the sort of the just tell me what to do, or you're the expert, tell me how is it done. Yeah. And so maybe that's how they're phrasing the question. But you're right that it probably would serve them better, and they would agree if they reflected on it, that it would be better for them to learn how to come up with the answer on their own.
Well, the interesting thing is I teach a lot in Asia, and so they're this adamant about, people don't want to spend time talking, because they have this more hierarchical structure. Right. And yet it's so fascinating. I get so much pushback in my classes. But then when they go actually practice the coaching skills or the coaching approach with their people, they come back to the follow-up classes going, wow, that was magical, because it's just habit for people to say, tell me what to do. Yeah. But when we just give people the answers, that you perpetuate that learned helplessness, that, well, I don't have to think for myself. And so even when you start to try to get people to think for themselves, they even may resist that. Like, why aren't you giving me the answers? Mm. And that's okay. But if you remember and recall, what is my purpose as a leader? Is it just to get things done, or is it really to develop that person sitting in front of me? And I believe that when we talk about development, it's not just developing their skills, but it's developing their mind. And when we develop their mind, then they can actually start doing things far more successfully for themselves. Then that feeling that we get inside of what mastery feels like, and autonomy, and what Daniel Pink talks about, mastery and autonomy and purpose, that they start to really have that feeling. It's not just a doing, it's a feeling. That those are the leaders we truly remember and admire, because they helped us to expand who we think that we are and what we're capable of doing.
Wow. And how much more powerful and how much better will the world be if we have more leaders like that?
I agree. I mean, think about it. I always tell people in my classes, think about the people that you remember for what they did for you in terms of, your ability to do more and to be more. And they always say it's the one who challenged me.
Yeah.
Not the one that, that encouraged me and praised me, which is good stuff. But there comes a point where I need to be just pushed a little bit more, and and when I say push, I don't mean, just push people over the cliff. I'm saying, ask them the questions that make them stop and go, wow, I hadn't thought about it that way. Yeah. And even that little bit, or I haven't thought about myself that way, that maybe I can be more, do more, or I'm getting in my own way. Yeah. And I realize that's just an amazing moment that people never forget.
Mm. And that's what you call the discomfort zone, isn't it?
It is. And it's funny because how many people said to me, well, when I saw the book, The Discomfort Zone, I thought it was my own discomfort, that I need to be more comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. And it's like, yeah, so that's addressed in the book, but that's secondary. Primary, it's, are you willing to create an uncomfortable moment with the people that you're with, that when you ask that question that makes me stop and think, then I may realize that I have been sabotaging myself. I haven't tried things because I'm afraid, and that creates an uncomfortable moment. But people get through that and get to the other side when they have the realization. So as a leader, are you willing to create that moment that it may be uncomfortable, but that's when they're most open to learn and to expand their thinking? So, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable for you too, but then can you just breathe and hold the space so the person in front of you can learn and grow?
Yeah. Do you think that there is any kind of a connection between the leader's maturity level, and I don't mean like age maturity, but maturity as a leader, or maturity in their being in their own skin, and their ability to do this successfully?
I do, in the sense of, again, what people tend to think of the purpose of leadership, because I find that as we start being a leader early in our career, we're so pushed to get things done, meet the KPIs and then, help with the organizational goals. And that is important. But what happens then when the leaders sit with people, they get so impatient to move to, so what are you going to do about that? Yeah. Instead of just being with them. So they're so, it's so hard for them to get over, we have to solve this problem and achieve these goals, and forgetting that you're really there to help the person in front of you. And those things are going to get done, and trusting that. But as leaders progress, they start to realize that it's okay to take a moment with the person and that things will get done. And when you say maturity level, you're right. It's not necessarily about age. It's about being able to experience what being a leader is and being with people. And we start to realize that, what service really means. Mm-hmm. If I'm in service to them as a leader, what does that really mean?
Yeah. And all of that compression in the workplace, with like people feeling like they have less time than they ever did and do more with less. And I mean, that certainly isn't helping, I bet.
No. No, I know. We have to create our own little bubble, for ourselves. And no, I'm not going to be pushed by that. Yeah. I'm going to remember what it is I want to achieve and trust that it's going to happen.
Yeah.
That the goals will be met.
So let's just dig in a tiny bit more about the discomfort zone. Obviously, I'm hoping that people will go and get a copy of this book because it's fabulous. I'm really happy that I was one of the first to get it and I was able to review it and help you to promote it. It is great stuff. So if you could help people get a very high level summary of the main gist of the book.
Well, the book is actually very practical, and I always thank my publisher for that because they always push me to, well, how are people going to use this? How are people going to use this?
Yeah.
Because I always want to talk about the background and the science, and so it's a nice combination. It does start out looking at what are some of those common habits that you and I talked about, and also the rationalizations and reasons of why people don't do this, and then I debunk that and talk about, so what is it that we're trying to achieve and how do you really achieve that? That moves into the science of what it takes to create behavioral change, especially if a person is resistant or stuck, that, they are not really going to listen to your brilliant advice in that moment. So you're sort of wasting your breath. So when you recognize that someone is resistant or stuck, it takes a different approach to really get in and crack through that wall in order for them to see other possibilities. So I talk about how that works. How do we create what I call insight-based learning in the brain that leads to behavioral change, which is the ultimate goal of the leader, is to get this person to change their behavior.
Yeah.
So I talk about, what goes on and then what it is that they're aiming to achieve. And then it goes into how do you do this? So I have, a model and steps. I have the setup for the conversation. How do you want to go into the conversation? And then what do you do when you're there? How do you listen for what to say? What are the clues that the person will give you that you say, oh, that's it. That's what I need to ask about that will actually break through their barrier. And then there's 2 full chapters of case studies where the reader can read through how leaders have used this so they can see for themselves how they may use this material.
Which is so helpful, I think, and I don't know, I think I'm like you, that I love the abstract and the conceptual and the research and the theories, but I know that people just love to have those really concrete examples and stories. It helps them learn so much better. So can you give an example about the listening? How do you listen for the clues? I'd love to hear one.
Sure. Well, I always like to give the examples that happened to me as well as, I had my last boss. Was not somebody that I would say was a great boss in terms of a little bit of micromanaging. And we were constantly arguing about things and how things should get done. But he still had this amazing way of listening to me, that he would just sit back, he would listen to what I was saying, and he could pick it up, what was really stopping me, what was my own assumptions, beliefs, what was going on. And that's why I always say he was one of my best leaders, even though we struggled through the management process. But I will always respect him and remember him for his leadership. So there was this one time I was complaining about my coworkers, on the HR team, and, I had all this work to do, but they were doing this, but not really, accomplishing a lot. Of course, I always did all this work, and people never worked as hard as me. It's the constant high achiever complaint, right?
Yes.
And he was just sitting there, and finally he says to me, wow, it seems like you're just really disappointed with everyone. And I'm like, yeah, I am. And he said, will anyone ever be good enough for you?
Whoa.
Exactly. And it made me just gasp. It broke through my little ego structure in my brain and made me just stop. And I ran through this history of me constantly doing this in all of my relationships.
Wow.
And I couldn't even respond to him in the moment. I'm like, oh my, I have to think about that. And over the next few days, I realized I had been setting myself up for difficulties in all my relationships, I think, for most of my life, for whatever reasons. But I was always seeing people, as not doing enough, which made me be the superhero, and doing more, and not really recognizing what they were doing well and how I could work with them instead of against them. So it led to these, very rich conversations, with myself and with him of how I could reestablish my relationships by his one reflection and one question.
Amazing.
And the thing is that, what I describe in the Discomfort Zone in the book is that, what you're listening for is not what the person needs to do, but what's stopping them, what's the block. And they're going to give you hints by their emotions, the anger, and frustration. And you start to ask, what are you really angry about? Or what's truly frustrating you? You sense, or they'll tell you, I'm so frustrated with this. You key into the emotion words and just get curious about that. And then in the book, I also talk about, a deeper level of listening where we activate our entire nervous system. And you honestly can pick up, what is it that this person really wants, or what are they attached to that they can't let go of? Like a lot of leaders, they come to me and they've got, I've got to have this really difficult conversation with this person, but I don't know what to say. And if I jumped into, let's practice it. What might you say to the person? I'm not really looking at what's stopping them. This is a smart person. They know what to say. And I start saying, so when you go into the conversation, what do you think's going to happen? And they start to talk about, what could happen, and they're afraid of the emotional reaction they may create. So we could talk about that. But then if I really listen to what's been stopping you from having this conversation in the first place, it almost always boils down to, well, if there's something wrong with the person, then there must be something wrong with me as a leader. And I think there must be something else I can do to fix this that I haven't tried. And I always ask the question, do you think you've done your best? You've done everything you could in this situation? And they always stop and go, yeah, I really have. And it's like, okay, can you give yourself credit for that? And just move into the conversation that you just have to have. So again, you're just really looking at what's stopping this, what's the fear, what's the difficulty that a person's having in moving forward. If you can get to that and get them to stop and think about that, then you can always then say, okay, so now what do you need to do? And they'll tell you. They'll always tell you. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. That was a really helpful example. And I think that a lot of people are going to be able to hear themselves in your story, to hear echoes of their own internal conversations in that story, which is why, of course, you're helping so many people. And thank you for that work. I know that we don't have a lot more time left, and there's a couple more things I wanted to talk to you about. So just real quick, though, do you think that organizations are doing it right when they're developing new and potential leaders? What's something that they could do even better?
Well, first off, to catch them early on. How many leaders come to me and say, I wish I had this years ago. And then they feel bad because they've not been doing it right. And I'm like, well, you did your best, and now you have something new to do. So, but I think getting people to learn how to listen and to listen more deeply, even if we're not teaching them full coaching skills, but giving them a coaching approach on how to really be with people. And then in the book, when I talk about the setup at the safety bubble, to teach them how to shift their emotions. So if they're angry or afraid, how can they be present with people? So setting an emotional tone, the leader always sets the emotional tone. They have to be a little emotional intelligence is always good. How to identify how I feel? How can I shift these emotions? How can I look at the person in front of me and see the best in them instead of the worst of them?
Wow.
These things are really important for all new leaders, but especially new leaders.
That I agree. And I see that a lot in my work. And when you look at the new generation coming up, everybody loves to complain about them, the millennials or Generation Y, but having grown up with technology ever present in their devices, I do think that gets in the way of them building those listening skills, or that they build very different listening skills. So I think there's lots of work to be done.
Well, and I love that the millennials, what they're doing is they're pushing to be listened to.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone has always wanted that, but they just expected they wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
Where the millennials are saying, listen to me, I have a lot to offer. And we need to stop and listen to them and see what they have to offer and build on that.
That's right.
So bless the millennials for pushing what all leaders should do.
Yeah. They're pushing leaders into their discomfort zone big time.
Right.
So what's really exciting for you now that the book is done and you've been marketing it, and so what's on the horizon?
The book has allowed me to really move in and to focus on the work that I most love to do. And this is around really working with leaders to how to really connect with people. Because again, I don't know how many people are necessarily saying, I want my leader to steer the ship, but they want them to be next to them, to truly partner with them. And so I'm really working on how do we develop that full partnership where I really feel you as my leader is my partner on this journey. And I think there's that shift. So it's not in front and it's not necessarily behind. It's right next to us. Mm-hmm. So partner leader is what I'm working on.
Oh my God. I've had leaders like that. It makes a world of difference, Yeah. So the listeners are developing their leadership skills, and you've talked about a lot, and when they read your book, they'll learn a lot. But sometimes that's very overwhelming. So what's one actionable thing that they could do starting today or starting this week that you think will help them shift their leadership skills upward? What's one thing they could do to upgrade their leadership skills?
Well, one of the favorite things that I like to tell leaders is that, people want you to be present more than they need you to be perfect. Mm. So I think if we just start working on just when somebody comes to you and you turn and you look at them as how can you be present with them in the moment? There's so many things going on, yes. But can you shut that out? Can you turn around and can you look at this person and have them feel that you were present with them? So many leaders say to me, well, it's so hard for me to get people to talk to me, to have them open up and share and be vulnerable. And I'm always saying, well, how are you listening to them?
Right.
That if you fully turn around and you're curious and you care, they sense that and they will open up to you. And it's not going to take a forever conversation. They're not going to, be all over the place. You just need to be present with them. And then you can always just feed back to them. So I'm hearing this, I think I have the gist of your story. And once they get that you're really listening to them, that story will end and you can start to move forward.
Be present.
Yeah.
And that I think that enables everything that you've been teaching, that is probably just that turnkey thing to get started on.
Right.
Good. I like that. So everyone and anyone, no matter what position you're in or what your role is, and in every conversation, whether it's business or personal, how can we practice being more present? Do you have like a quick way to do that, or just something really, really practical to help people shut out the distractions? What do you suggest?
Actually, I have on my website, there's an emotional inventory and an exercise where you stop 3 times a day and just ask, what am I doing and how am I feeling? Mm. And what's really interesting is, so if you set yourself your phone or your computer a little alarm that just stops and says, how are you, what are you doing? How are you feeling? And starts to create the habit in the brain to be more aware in the moment. So you're actually widening the neurotransmitters from your cognitive to your emotional brain and creating a broader awareness for yourself. So if you practice this every day for, a few weeks, you'll start to do it naturally. So when somebody is with you, you can immediately go, what am I doing? What am I feeling? Can I shift to being present and feeling curious? And curious is really a feeling. Can I feel curious and care about this person?
Yeah.
So you're shifting your emotions in this moment as well as your attention, which I think is really critical. So just practice that. You don't really need any tools. You just practice that and set your alarms and ask yourself those 2 questions.
Great advice. And so what you're saying, and this rings true from the research I've done, is that by practicing this simple thing, you're actually creating new pathways in your brain.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love it. Love it. That is so practical and so applicable. Thank you very much for that. And I think that that'll make a huge difference. So how can people get in touch with you or learn more about you as we wrap this podcast interview up?
So my website is outsmartyourbrain.com. And there are, under the resource section of the website, there's all kinds of tools and things that people can access and use. So it's a website that's useful for everybody. And my email is Marcia, Marcia, at outsmartyourbrain.com. So that would be the best and the quickest way of finding me.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to make sure that I list that in the show notes as well as your books and some of the other things that we mentioned in this. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, Marcia. I think that you're always just so energizing and inspiring and, of course, very knowledgeable and smart. So thank you for sharing that with my audience, and I hope that you make today an excellent day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
That was fun. I enjoyed talking to Marcia, and I hope that you enjoyed learning from her. She has such a vast amount of knowledge to share, and I love that last tip. So make sure that you take action so that it's not just an idea in the back of your head, but actually something that helps you grow in your own leadership mastery. Thanks for tuning in. Go to the show notes to get all of the links to everything we discussed, including Marcia's books, Marcia's website, the resources she mentioned, and some of the other things we talked about. That's at talentgrow.com/podcast/episode 13. And as always, please share this with others you think you might find this beneficial. Leave us a rating and a review on iTunes so that more people can discover us. And leave me comments in the comments below on the show notes page. Thanks for tuning in. Make today great.
Thanks for listening to the TalentGrow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.